seconds remaining.
This is my neck of the woods.
Can be found in the Rise of the Ghosts DLC. Released shortly after the main game, this DLC was pretty much more of the same, though it was home to a really cool Easter egg. At the Serpent Tower, you climb a really long ladder.
What a thrill.
So your character saying "What a Thrill" is a reference to the song Snake Eater from Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. The opening lyric to that song, which can be heard when climbing a really long ladder, is "What a Thrill."
What a thrill.
That's not all though. Once you reach the top of the tower, you can see that someone has jumped from the top but didn't survive, which is hardly surprising. Anyway, heading back down the tower will reveal a familiar looking body. So this man who couldn't fly is a reference to Assassin's Creed, with my personal opinion being that it looks like Ezio. Of course, Rage 2 isn't the only game to depict a dead assassin. In The Witcher 2 you could find another body which would cause Geralt to say this.
Guess they'll never learn.
Now, when it comes to Easter eggs, the Kingdom Rush series is one of the most Easter egg packed there is. We originally covered Kingdom Rush Vengeance in episode 50 of this series, where we found tons of references to movies, games, and just about everything else in between. Now, the first of the Kingdom Rush Vengeance Easter eggs for today's video can be found on the Gerald Lightseeker level. If you click the route that I do, this will happen.
take more than that. Yeah, we have lost the lead. We have an over.
Let us move the barricade.
I'll never tire of this. Earthshatter, ready. My hunter is ready. The robot is ours. My greetings. Pushing ahead.
Push forward.
Stand behind me, friends. Let's get moving. We've taken the lead. I will keep you safe. My journey continues. They must not take the lead.
I continue on this path.
just hit.
Forward spawn activated. Seconds remaining.
We took the robot. Don't let it move a single step.
I've been knocked down before. My ultimate is almost ready.
This is my neck of the woods.
My mother trained half our team. I'll sign the rest of you up for lessons.
Stay close to me and I'll keep you safe. Hey! Hey!
So clicking the route will cause Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy to appear. Next up, on the Northerners Outpost level, if you repeatedly click the snowman, this will happen. So the boring old snowman will turn into Olaf from Disney's Frozen. I'm sure there's loads more Easter eggs that I haven't found in Kingdom Rush, and if you know of any that I haven't covered, then please let me know. Right, let's end today's video with Ghost Hunting Spookfest Phasmophobia. Now, Phasmophobia has a pretty decent selection of Easter eggs, with even video game horror icon Slenderman making an appearance. Slenderman isn't the The only creepy figure that can be found in Phasmophobia, with this mysterious thing watching you from the rafters in the game's lobby. Well, in the most recent update, the lobby has changed quite a bit, but a familiar face still lurks in the shadows. Now, the final Easter egg for today's video is extremely creepy. You may remember in the previous version of the lobby that you could be jump scared by looking at a door. Well, looking at the door now is a lot scarier. So strange cloaked figures will spawn before closing in on you and then disappearing. Now, I did manage to get a closer look at these mystery cloak people, and one thing I noticed is their breath. If you look closely, you can see them breathing, which if anything makes them spookier. Now, I'm not a Phasmophobia expert, so if there is some in-game reason for this Easter egg, then please let me know in the comments. So that's it. If you enjoyed this video, then leaving a like is really appreciated. If you are a fan of Easter eggs and secrets in video games, then perhaps consider subscribing, as that's what this channel is all about. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll speak to you all soon.
星と深淵。
If you were invited to a man only to be kept prisoner as a vampire's bride, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the vampire lord in the invitation. This college student is going to kill Dracula. Evie here is at home and learning how to use her new DNA testing kit. Her whole family is dead, and wanting to see if any relatives are still alive, she decides to try it out. The woman doesn't want to be alone anymore and sends the test back to the company with no idea that she's going to be kidnapped by a cult of bloodthirsty vampires. Days later, she hangs out with her best friend when she gets an email from the DNA testing company revealing that she has a British cousin. He wants to meet with her soon, but Evie's friend finds it suspicious. They know nothing about this guy, and the friend jokes that he might be planning on taking her organs. It sounds crazy, and the college student reassures the woman that she's being paranoid, replying to the man to set up a reunion. The next morning, she meets with her cousin for lunch, and he happily reveals that everyone in her extended family wants to meet her. He suggests she comes to England for their aunt's wedding to meet the rest of the clan, and the woman tells him she can't afford the trip, but the man reassures her that he'll cover the cost. Surprised, Evie is blown away by his generosity, and with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in her hands, she accepts. Traveling to Yorkshire, the woman is picked up by her cousin, and she's taken deep into the English countryside to this huge manor. Getting out of the car, the college student admires the scenery and starts to text her friend, but bumps right into a maid. The woman drops a crate of wine glasses on the ground, and Evie immediately gets down to help her clean up the mess. The maid is surprised by her kindness, but then this butler comes over and orders the helpers to clean up faster. Angry, the college student confronts him, but they're interrupted when Walter here steps in. The butler quickly excuses himself, and the woman asks the man who he is, but that's when the cousin joins them, introducing Walter as the Lord of the Manor. Evie can't help but find him charming, and soon, she'll discover he's hiding a terrible secret. Later, the butler gives her a tour of the building, telling her she's allowed to go anywhere in the estate except for the library, and leads the American upstairs where she meets Mrs. Swift, her personal maid. The older woman takes her into the guest room, and the college student is amazed by how fancy everything is. But then she notices something strange. There are spiked bars in the window, and the maid explains that the local shrikes start attacking people around this time of the year. It's shocking to hear, and as the American finishes looking around, she spots a painting of a woman. The maid explains that it's the former lady of the house, but she sadly passed away recently. With everything sorted, the old woman leaves the room, but soon she'll be the only person in the entire country that Evie can trust. Okay, something doesn't add up here. Earlier, this maid told Evie a story about the local shrikes, explaining that they plucked out a stable boy's eye, and these window bars are meant to keep the birds away. Now, this might sound crazy, but shrikes have actually been known to attack humans, and will impale their prey on spikes before stripping away the meat. It's brutal, but the strange thing is, if you look at the design of the window bars, it has a half-inch white spike, and it's clear that they were not designed to repel these birds. If anything, it would be the perfect design for a front row seat to watch one of nature's most savage savage predators kill its prey, and that likely means that this woman is already lying to us. Normally, you would want to have long thin spikes that are densely clustered so that the birds can't perch, and if the maid isn't being honest about something as simple as their window bars, then we can only imagine what else she might be hiding. Now, there's another suspicious detail, and that's the Russian doll that was given by the maids of honor. What's strange is that not only have we not met them yet, but we also aren't in the wedding, and we were the only guests to get one. For a wealthy English family to give their only American guest a Russian doll is such a weird thing to do that we have to assume there's a meaning behind this. What's interesting is that Matryoshka dolls actually symbolize a mother carrying a child within her, and represent a chain of mothers carrying on the family legacy through their children. This should be freaking Evie out, because when you add up all these details together, it starts to become clear that there's definitely an ulterior motive. The cousin was way too eager to meet up and pay for her trip, and the personal gift might be symbolizing that they see her as someone who should continue their family lineage. The truth is, we don't know anything about these people. So if I were Evie here, the least I could do is use my phone to verify everyone's stories by searching up the members of these wealthy families. We know the Lord of the Manor is called Walter DeVille, and the couple who are supposed to get married are Martin Alexander and Cecil DeVille. These families are obviously well connected, and the cousin told us that this will be the wedding of the century. That's a pretty serious claim, and if these people are who they say they are, then it would definitely come up in a Google search. In the UK, the public can easily access birth, marriage, and death records online, and if the information we find is wildly different from what we're being told, then we have every reason to suspect that we might be in danger. That night, the student goes out for a run but comes to a stop. There's something wrong with this place, and when Evie looks back at the house, she sees a woman staring through the window that looks identical to the lady of the manor. Suddenly, Evie wakes up from her nightmare and spots a figure sitting in the chair across from her. Terrified, she turns on the lights and finds no one there. She quickly leaves the room to get some water, but as Evie walks through the hallway, she spots the butler giving instructions to the maids, and they all look scared to death. The woman doesn't notice a creature's hand reaching out towards her, but at the last second she turns around, finding the hallway empty. That's when the old maid sneaks up on her, insisting that she should go back to bed, and Evie asks what's going on downstairs. The old maid only tells her that they're doing a final round of cleaning, but the girl won't find out what's really happening until it's too late. Meanwhile, downstairs, the butler opens the library door for the helper, and the girl walks inside with no idea this was a trap. The maid starts lighting candles in the room when she hears something creaking in the darkness, and the candles are blown out one by one. Terrified, the girl backs up when she spots a creature on the ceiling and screams as the monster attacks her. The next morning, Evie wakes up and is told that her family reunion has already started. Getting out of bed, she heads downstairs to meet her relatives, and her great uncle decides to make a toast, welcoming the woman to their clan. He's overjoyed that the family finally has a woman in the family, and although it sounds like a joke, she'll discover the dark secret they're all hiding. Meanwhile, the butler unlocks the gate to the wine cellar and tells these maids to fetch a specific bottle. Suspicious, the woman asks him why they're being sent in pairs, and the man reminds her that she can be a bit clumsy, so she'll need help. With their orders given, the women walk down into the cellar and begin looking around, but as they're searching, a hand suddenly touches this maid's head. At first, Dia thinks it's her friend, but notices the other maid isn't here, and realizes someone else touched her hair. Terrified, the girl tracks down the helper and manages to find her, as well as locate the vintage they're looking for. She reaches into the wine holder and manages to grab a hold of the bottle, but suddenly something pulls her arm. The girl doesn't know what's happening and panics, but then she notices someone standing behind the other maid. It's a tall figure hidden by shadows, and it breaks the girl's neck before dragging her into the darkness. Dia is left alone to fend for herself, and there's no one to hear her scream. This manor is hiding a terrifying secret, and Evie here doesn't suspect a thing. Okay, this place keeps getting weirder. There's definitely a bloodthirsty monster lurking around the mansion, but if Evie here was paying attention, she'd realize there are plenty of signs that something sinister is already going on. First of all, there's no good reason why a single maid is being selected to clean a massive library alone at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's also extremely strange that these girls' collars have numbers stitched into their uniforms. Normally, a housemaid's outfit wouldn't have anything on it, and if extra work is being done here, it must be for a reason. Usually, an English manor like this would keep the same people employed for long periods of time, because working in an estate this big is a very demanding job. We've already met staff members that we know on a name basis, so the only reason they would number these maids is because they're replaced constantly. It's a dead giveaway that these women are expendable and being set aside from the normal staff for a special purpose. Now, the most concerning thing about this is that the bell from the library rang twice. It might not seem like much, but it clearly means a family member is already inside the room, because someone has to pull on the sash in order to ring the bell. More importantly, they intentionally rang the the bell twice to select maid number 2. The truth is, you wouldn't need to select the maid at 3 in the morning for routine cleaning work, and the butler could have easily decided who was best for the job. Evie here should have realized that this woman was being chosen with a certain preference in mind, and when you combine this with their numbered uniforms, there's no question that these girls are here to be taken advantage of. It's very possible this is the British version of Epstein's Island, and we have to escape this place immediately. If it were me, I would be looking for maid number 2 the next morning to find out what happened, and if we discover that the girl has gone missing, then it's all the evidence we need to confirm that our lives are in danger too. As you can see from this itinerary, everyone expects us to be here for 3 full days, so with this in mind, I would use the next day to explore the grounds, observe the staff's routines, and try to plan an escape without anybody knowing. This will have to be done extremely carefully, because powerful people like this have a lot of influence, and it wouldn't be surprising if local police were on their payroll. As soon as the families realize that we know they're up to something bad, they're going to make sure we can't go home. That's why it's important to act as normally as possible until we come up with a plan and escape before the wedding ceremony begins. That night, Evie calls her coworker to talk about meeting her relatives and tells her they're good people. None of them have treated the girl poorly, and she shows off this fancy dress Lord Walter gave to her. It's clear the man is interested, and the woman heads for the garden where all the wedding guests have gathered. They all applaud her arrival, and her cousin takes the woman into the reception, reassuring Evie that she shouldn't be nervous. The maids of honor are the next to be announced, and they immediately approach the college student, welcoming her to the event. Curious, Evie asks the blonde Lucy how they know the bride, and she reveals that all 3 of their families have served Lord Walter's lineage for generations. That's when the taller woman Victoria comments that Evie is lucky to be here considering her background, and the college student excuses herself, not liking the woman's attitude. At the bar, Lucy admits to her that she's always wanted to visit New York, and Evie offers to show her around the city, but they're interrupted when Walter is announced to the banquet. Spotting the American, he walks up to her and takes the woman by the hand for the customary first dance. It makes Evie nervous, but the man calms her down, reassuring her they can go somewhere quieter after this. Later, he takes her to this private study and notices that she's fascinated by a pottery wheel. The woman explains that it reminds her of her mother and asks him about his parents, but the man reveals that they passed away. It's tragic, and Evie jokes that they're like characters from from a Charles Dickens story, but the Lord explains he's not a good person, revealing that he's done all of this only to impress her. That's when fireworks suddenly shoot up into the sky, and the two share a passionate kiss, with no idea that Victoria is spying on them. That night, Evie is sleeping in bed when she wakes up and notices something crawling on the canopy above her head. Terrified, she climbs out of bed and crawls underneath it as fast as possible, but then she sees a monstrous hand reaching out to grab her. Suddenly, the woman is pulled out from her hiding place and realizes that Walter has found her. She tells him that there's something in the room, and he turns on the light but finds no sign of any intruder. The woman doesn't know what to make of it, but is certain she wasn't seeing things. Later, the old maid comes in to clean up the broken lamp, and the college student admits that it feels like she's going crazy in this manner. Mrs. Swift is about to say something when the Lord walks in and dismisses her for the night, letting them have their privacy. Checking in on Evie, the man offers to stay by her side until she falls asleep, and the woman accepts. They lie together on the bed, passing the time by asking each other questions until she finally falls asleep. The next morning, the woman wakes up to find her bed empty before she hears a knock at the door. That's when the maids of honor walk into the room and tell her they've set up a spa date together. It's unexpected, but Evie joins them, leaving her phone behind, and soon she'll discover a shocking secret. Okay, this girl is being groomed. Ever since Evie has arrived, she's been constantly haunted each night, and the situation is clearly escalating. It's terrifying, but the bigger problem is that this is being done for a very specific reason. The first night, she clearly saw a human figure staring at her from this chair. Then the next night, a creature was crawling over her bed, but the family keeps going out of their way to make her feel like the most important person in the room. When you look at the pattern that's being established, this is clearly a psychological trick, because the more terrified she is of being alone, the safer she will feel with everyone else. If Evie was paying attention, she'd notice that the whole family is intentionally trying to make her doubt her own instincts, and this is exactly what happens when you're being groomed by a cult. Walter here is basically playing good cop bad cop by haunting her at night, and then showing up to tell her there's nothing to worry about. The more this happens, the more she will question her own judgment, and this makes her a lot easier to manipulate. Right now, we can't trust anything we hear or see, and that's why if I were in this situation, I would try to get close to Mrs. Swift. Earlier in the bedroom, it was clear that the woman had something to tell us, but when Walter showed up, she stopped herself and left. This is a sign that she has information the man wouldn't want her sharing, and it's exactly what we need in order to escape this place for good. I would have looked for moments alone with the woman, so I could ask if she thinks Walter and the Alexanders will make a good new family, hoping it'll trigger her to tell us the truth. If she's on our side, then she might even be able to smuggle us out of the mansion, and we need to do everything we can to find an ally if we want any chance of leaving here safely. Now, Evie also should have trusted her instincts and further investigated whatever was haunting her during the night. First thing she should examine is the carpet in front of the door and the fabric of the bed canopy, because the creature's nails would have frayed the carpet and left small tears or puncture marks. If she finds something, then it's undeniable proof that the creature was real and that Walter is intentionally lying to us. Later, the group arrives at the spa, and as Evie gets a manicure, she tells Lucy how excited she is to finally meet the bride and groom tonight. Curious, the blonde asks if she would want to get married anytime soon, but the American answers no. That's when the other woman interrupts and asks if Lord Walter has revealed anything about his relationship with the Maids of Honor. It's a strange question, and the student makes it clear that he's kept that to himself, but has no problem with him keeping secrets. Victoria doesn't believe her, and asks if she isn't curious about what he does in the locked rooms, when suddenly, the beautician cuts Evie's finger. It's starting to bleed, and the British woman steps out of the pool to take a look at it, before sucking on the wound. Disgusted, Evie storms off and leaves the spa, but as she walks into the lobby, the woman spots the library door. She's curious to know what's inside and heads over to a cabinet, discovering a hidden compartment with the key inside. Unlocking the door, the woman enters the room and snoops around, but accidentally knocks over a jar. She quickly begins to clean up her mess, but finds something horrifying. It's a file with all kinds of information about her, including the results from the DNA test. Heading to her room, Evie begins packing her things when Walter walks in and asks what's going on. She hands over the papers, and the man tries to explain himself, but the woman scolds him for stalking her. Defending himself, the Lord tells her that he only ran a background check to make sure she wasn't going to take advantage of him and wanted to know more about her. It calms Evie down, and the Lord begs her not to leave, insisting that he won't keep any more secrets. With that, the two kiss, and after an intimate moment, they talk in bed. They're falling in love, and Walter suggests they should just get married, pointing out that everything's already been set up. The woman jokingly agrees as he gets up to leave, and Evie makes it clear she wasn't serious about the wedding, but the man silently walks away. That night, she arrives at the dining room where all the guests have gathered, and sits next to the Lord at the head of the table. He welcomes each of the three families to his manor and formally begins the banquet, but Evie notices there's something strange. Confused, the woman asks where the bride and groom are, but he doesn't answer. Instead, he stands up to make another announcement, reminding the group that they suffered a great loss ever since the last lady of the house died, but now she will be replaced. That's when he reveals that he and Evie are set to be married. All the guests applaud in celebration, but then a maid is brought to the table and her throat is slit. Horrified, the American stares in shock as the family members begin to laugh and act like nothing happened. These people are not only insane, but some of them are vampires, and the serving staff takes the maid's blood, filling the glasses they hand out to the guests. Okay, this is really f***ed up. Evie finally knows the truth about why she's here, and it's more terrifying than anything she ever imagined. Not only are they a cult of vampires, but she'll also be forced to marry Walter, trapping her here for the rest of her life. Now, everyone in the room knows that she's going to be resistant to this, and that means she should expect to be put under constant surveillance from this point on. It doesn't get much worse than this, but there might still be one thing we can do to improve the situation. Earlier, this old man expressed gratitude that the family discovered Evie because everyone else is male. This comment reveals that she's essential to their survival because she's the only living woman in the family tree, so their plan is dependent on keeping her alive. With this in mind, if I were Evie, I would grab one of these knives and hold myself hostage, threatening to end their scheme unless they let me say goodbye to my friend. The family will be desperate not to lose Walter's new bride, so they might give in as long as she promises not to reveal the truth. If she can convince them, then once she gets in touch with her friend, Evie would have a chance to send a coded message that she's in trouble. When the woman first landed in England, Evie and her friend set up a strict rule not to trust men with goatees. If the woman says she's met someone who's very trustworthy and will be growing a goatee for their wedding, her friend will instantly know that something is wrong. It's a long shot, but if we don't try everything we can to make contact with the outside world, then we'll be stuck here forever. If all else fails, the best way to handle this situation would be to pretend that we've given up any hope of escape and accept the proposal. It might seem suspicious, but if there's one thing these people understand, it's lust for power and wealth. That's why I would start making requests that demonstrate self-interest, and as counterintuitive as it might seem, this might be enough to convince everyone in the room that we've bought into the idea, and now we're just haggling over a price. With that said, this strategy is going to take some time because they'll need to be convinced for long enough that they relax their surveillance. The bad news is that we'll probably still have to go through with the wedding, but it also gives us a better chance of escape. Afterwards, her best bet would be to wait a couple months, then look for a toxic plant on the mansion's grounds to poison herself with. It's important to remember that the three families in attendance are lawyers, accountants, and real estate brokers who have been serving the lord of the manor, so there aren't any doctors among them. This means that if we can find and ingest a very low dose of something like nightshade or oleander, the symptoms will be serious enough to force the family to rush us to a nearby hospital for treatment. Getting out of this mansion is the most effective way to improve our chances of escape, and even if we get extremely sick, it's still worth the risk. Walter continues his speech, reminding them that their families have been providing him a wife from each clan in return for financial success. This agreement was threatened when Evie's great-grandmother, the previous lady of the house, died, and the woman realizes that this entire trip was actually meant to fulfill this ancient pact. Traumatized, the college student stands up and tries to leave, but the waiting staff stop her. The Lord calls her back to the table as the woman begs the others for help, but they refuse. Panicking, she starts banging on the door, but the Lord stops her and demands she calms down. There's no one who will help her, and the staff take the woman away, leaving her in a cellar by herself. That's when the maids of honor walk in, revealing that they're married to the vampire lord, and the tall woman demands that she stop resisting. That's when Evie suddenly realizes that the creature she saw in her bedroom was actually Victoria, and asks why they're doing this to her. The vampire explains that their bloodline is special, and when they're all united, then they become immortal. Lucy here also explains that she'll be forced to drink Walter's blood during the wedding ceremony to become his new vampire bride. Once the man drinks her blood, they'll all continue to live forever and be bound to his will. Suddenly, a helper jumps up and tries to escape her bindings, but gets stopped by her restraints. The tall vampire picks the woman up, intending to drink her blood, but Evie begs her not to. Humoring the American, she orders the butlers to prepare the maid for the ceremony and has a surprise for Evie. She opens up a coffin, mocking the girl that this is where she'll be sleeping, and the vampire cuts her free before throwing her into the coffin. With that, the woman nails the door shut as the American begs for help and walks away, leaving her trapped inside. Later, she hears a creaking sound, and the front of the coffin opens up. The old maid has found her and insists they need to get out now. Confused, Evie asks why she's helping her, and the woman reveals that her great-grandmother was a close friend, but the American needs to get out of here before the staff catches them. She warns Evie that if they do, her best chance for survival is to either stab them with a stake or burn them, and urges the girl to leave now. The woman escapes from the manor and heads for this old building, but soon she'll discover something horrible. Okay, this was not smart. It won't take long for these people to realize Evie is trying to escape, but the problem is that she's just left behind her most valuable resource. Mrs. Swift here isn't a vampire, and is probably going to be killed for helping the woman, but there's one area where she has a huge advantage over the rest of the family. This house is massive with many secret passages, and that's why if I were Evie, I would insist that the maid use her knowledge of the property to help us escape. Traditionally, estates like this have a very specific way of managing their staff, and the mansions were actually built so that it would be possible for the servants to move throughout the entire building without the lords and ladies ever needing to see them. It's also important to point out that these vampires are centuries old, but from what we've seen, they're only concerned with enjoying the lavish lifestyle of an English manor. This means that they're probably not that familiar with the servant corridors that run throughout the mansion, and it's the best way to avoid getting caught right now. Mrs. Swift will have more knowledge about these areas than anyone else, and since everyone will assume that we don't know the layout, they'll be checking obvious exits instead of the hidden pathways throughout the mansion. Now, this will give us a good head start, but we're going to need something to lure the family away from our escape route, and that's why we need to create a distraction. The manor is very old and has been renovated with electrical wiring, but they also have candles scattered throughout the building. With this in mind, if I were Evie, I would take one to the kitchen and light it, placing it in the far end of the room. Then, I would turn on the gas to let it leak before running away, making sure any doors into the kitchen are closed. When the gas eventually reaches the flame, then it will cause an explosion, starting a fire that could burn the house down if it's not stopped. Now, we don't see a stove in this kitchen, but they clearly have one because earlier at the banquet, they served a huge variety of roasted meat, including frogs. As long as they have gas stoves somewhere, then by filling the room with fumes that can be ignited by an open flame, a fire will start spreading and staff members will be called in to put it out. This strategy would give us an opening that we can take advantage of and run past them into the woods. As the fire spreads, the nearby staff will divert their attention to putting it out, leaving gaps in their patrol. Since the vampire cult needs Evie alive, we don't have to worry about getting killed if they catch us, and a big distraction like this will give us our best chance of getting out of here safely. Once she reaches the ice house, she can arm herself with some of these tools hanging on the wall, and could even break the handle off of a shovel to use as a stake. Inside, the woman is shocked to find the helpers' corpses have been stored here, but then she hears men approaching. She quickly finds a place to hide, and the staff members dump the old maid's body on the table above her. It's horrible to see, and Evie tries to stay quiet, but can't hold back a whimper as blood drips onto her face. That gets the butler's attention, and he looks around the room, realizing that she's somewhere in this building. Acting quickly, the woman rushes outside and locks the door behind her at the last second. She's managed to escape and sprints into the woods, hoping to find help. That night, she arrives at a nearby town and begs this woman to call the police. Seeing how scared she is, the old lady lets her in and offers Evie a cup of tea, as the old woman's husband makes a call. The American excuses herself, looking around the house, but then she spots a shocking photo. It shows the older couple standing with the vampire lord's butler, and realizes that they secretly work for him. Putting down the phone, the old lady informs her that police will be here soon and insists that she drink her tea. With only one chance to escape, Evie throws the hot tea into the husband, but gets whacked in the head by the old lady and blacks out. Later, she wakes back up in the manor right next to Walter and demands to know who he actually is. The man reveals that he is a creature known as a Strigoi, and his father was Vlad Dracul. That means Walter is actually Dracula and tries to convince her to join him as his new vampire bride. She'll be able to live forever with immense wealth, and points out that it's everything a poor person like her could want. But that makes the girl furious. Evie spits in his face, rejecting his offer, but the man makes it clear that the wedding will happen whether she likes it or not. That's when maid number 4 here wakes up, terrified of being in this room, and the vampire lord walks over to the woman to drink her blood. It's too much for Evie to take, and she passes out. Later, she wakes up at the wedding ceremony, being led by her great uncle down the aisle. Everyone has gathered here today, and she's instructed to sit down next to the vampire lord as the priest asks their wedding vows. It's a terrifying experience, and she notices that they brought out one of the maids, but there's something here that could help her escape. Noticing several burning candles on the altar, she quickly comes up with a plan as the man accepts her to be his bride. She agrees to him being her husband, and the Lord holds his arm to the woman, letting Evie drink his blood. With that complete, she suddenly stands up and begins to transform into a vampire, giving her the power she needed to execute her plan. Okay, this was brilliant. Evie has managed to convince everyone that she's committed to the cause, and now she has the strength of a vampire. The problem is that with 3 other vampires in the room and a crowd of cult members, she's completely outnumbered. Now, as terrifying as it sounds, the good news is that if she's thinking clearly, there might be a way to get her revenge and escape from this nightmare once and for all. Earlier, Walter explained that the only essential members of this cult are him and his 3 wives. Everyone else are leeches who provide him with brides from their bloodlines and enjoy unspeakable wealth in return. We were also told that the vampires can only be strong if all 3 bloodlines are joined together. This is exactly what we want to hear, because it gives us the perfect target for who we should use our new powers to kill. If it were me, instead of trying to run away, I would keep sucking Walter's blood to weaken him further. We can already see that it's drained a lot of his strength, and that's why the smartest thing to do is make sure he's weak enough for us to kill. Everyone watching the ceremony is going to assume that the new bride is just getting thirsty as she transforms, and even though our enthusiasm might seem strange, it's unlikely that anybody will intervene. Now, traditionally, to kill a vampire, we need to drive a stake through its heart, and Mrs. Swift has already confirmed that the creatures are vulnerable to stakes, beheadings, or fire, which are all classical weaknesses in vampire mythology. With this in mind, once we've made Walter weak enough, I would look for something wooden to stab him in the heart as quickly as possible before his strength returns. There's not a lot of options in this room, but the best thing that might do the job is this old man's cane. If we use our vampire speed and grab it before snapping off the end to make sure it's sharp, we might be able to kill Walter with it before anyone realizes what's going on. If our plan is successful, then every vampire in the room will lose their powers because it's all tied to this man's blood. The bride's already hinted that if he dies, then they become human again, and that means killing this one vampire will fix all of our problems for good. The woman demands to drink from the helper next and walks over to her, but at the last second, she knocks the candles over, setting a massive fire. Furious, the Lord confronts her, but she stabs him in the heart with a stake. It's one of the only ways to kill a vampire, and with all the guests running out of the room in a panic, Evie breaks the maid from her chains. They quickly run out of there as fast as they can, but then Victoria comes rushing after them and tackles the American. The two women get into a fight and trade blows, but Evie is quickly overpowered. The vampire stabs her nails into the American woman's body, but she's suddenly attacked from behind by Lucy. Throwing the college student across the room, the tall woman demands the other vampire to stand down, but she refuses. They fight it out, but that was Victoria's biggest mistake, as she shoves straight into the spear of a statue, stabbing them both through their bodies. That's when Evie wakes up and sees the vampire lord's wives turn to dust. That's one problem dealt with, but there's still more to come. Suddenly, the butler attacks her from behind and shoves the woman into a room, determined to stab her to death. He's furious that she betrayed them all and pushes the tip into her chest, but Evie breaks the blade off, using it to kill him. She quickly grabs some cheese wire and gets to work setting the entire building on fire, making sure no one will escape. The woman walks through the hallways ready to leave when she sees the vampire lord crawling on the walls and he's coming straight for her. Terrified, she runs for the exit, but at the last second, Walter manages to catch her. He's furious that she would reject everything that he could offer the woman and now she'll die here, but this will be his last mistake. Evie pulls out the cheese wire and wraps it around his wrist, slicing it clean off. Seizing the opportunity, she kicks Dracula into the flames and lets him burn. It's finally over, and now the woman can get out, having learned a valuable lesson. Never get your DNA tested, because you might not like what you find.
But what do you think? How would you beat the invitation? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.
武流祭の雰囲気はどうだ？気に入ってくれたか？何か知りたいことがあるのか？肉親と離れ離れになってしまう苦痛は僕にもよくわかる。不幸であることに違いはないが、そのような経験は成長につながるものだ。一人前になりたいのなら事実に向き合わなければならない。友の協力があればより順調にことが進むだろう。武流祭の雰囲気はどうだ？何か知りたいことがあるのか？開封した熟成酒には父さんがよく言っていた言葉が込められていた。今の僕を見たらどう思うだろうか。昔と同じような見方はしないだろうね。そうか。武流祭の雰囲気はどうだ？何か知りたいことがあるのか？モンド人にとって酒造りは感情を残す過程であり、歴史を明記する手段でもある。戦争は過去のものとなり、生活がより平和になったからこそ質の高い酒を醸造できるようになった。自分が祭りを祝う一員にならなくとも僕は満足している。そういえばバケーションサイダーは飲んでみたか？何か意見があればぜひ聞かせてほしい。難攻不落。いやみんなは俺が守れ。もちろん。やっおっとラッキー。はあへいそりゃほなせっやっさあ金魚やで。はっへっはっへっへっやてや震えろ。危機に陥った時の対応は得意ではない。天道燃えろ。全力攻撃だ。くらえ塵となれ。岩山八九いってるで。ラッキー。やっせっおっとせ 冒険だ冒険。みんながそばにいてくれるわ。
難攻不落天理チョーク。やっはっふんはっ。
くらえ。はっ燃えろ。ふっくらえ。へっへっ燃えろ。ふっふっはっ隙あり。はあくらえ。へっ落ちろ。燃えろ。
花火に火。はあせっとりゃふっほな行くで。
岩山八九天道万象。
みんなは俺が守る。震えろ。はっへっへっへっさあへっへやってや落ちろ。
難攻不落。
くらえ。
気ぃつけるで。おっと勝ちいやそりゃやっせっけ祭りの開始や。
天道ここにあり。やっ
燃えろ。みんながそばにいてくれるわ。傷なんて痛まない。
せっふん隙あり。
火の用心やっはっはっえおっとそりゃせっさあ
剣女盤石。ふ天理チョーク。はっ
燃えろ。みんなは俺が守れ。震えろ。
岩山八九。
花火に火。おっと
いざ。はっ。やっ。天道ここにあり。剣女盤石。
震えろ。落ちろ。
やっ。
いや全力攻撃だ。燃えろ。くらえ。塵となれ。みんながそばにいてくれる。
天理チョーク。難攻不落。はっ。
火の用心ほなおっとそりゃ
燃えろ。落ちろ。
霹靂先陣。
燃えろ。みんなは俺が守る。
いざ。
震えろ。
いや隙あり。はっ。はっ。天道ここにあり。
燃えろ。俺は不出来な団長だな。昴生塵となれ。震えろ。
天道万象。はっ。
燃えろ。冒険だ冒険。みんながそばにいてくれれば傷なんて痛まない。くらえ。昴生。
難攻不落。
気ぃつけるぜ。はあおっとラッキー。やっはあ
岩山八九。
火の用心。さあそりゃ
とめてやらなくもね。天理
花火にやっおっとはーせやっやきふってへっやっはーたまや
震えろ。落ちろ。冒険だ。くらえ。想定内の不運だ。
隙あり。はっせ天道万象。
塵となれ。こうせ。
剣女盤石。
やっそりゃへっやっおっとはーやっはっへいやそりゃせはーふっおっとやきへいやそりゃへっせみっともないさあはーえっ よし。おお。
轟さん、商品が届いたから棚卸ししてくれ。
おう、今行く。
声出さないで、こっそりついていくんだ。
轟さんの情報は正しかった。俺たちが到着した時、ノブシチューたちはまだ寝ていたぜ。品物も全部回収できた。まさに一網打尽ってやつだ。
よし、数えてみよう。うん、問題ない。ご苦労だった。
とんでもない。轟さんの正体が頑張ってくれたおかげで村じゃ食料の値が下がったんだぜ。
その通り。特に俺たちみたいなよく負傷する連中は戦争の後遺症がこんなにひどいとは思わなかった。幸い轟さんが持ち帰ってきてくれた薬のおかげで救われてるよ。
上からの支援のおかげで状況は良くなってきてるんだ。そうだ、村の在庫状況はどうだ。今夜中に確認してくれ。明日の朝、三宮で五郎様の許可を得たらすぐに出発するからな。
心配ない。リストは整理してある。俺たちと一緒に来てくれ。
三宮の兵士がノブ刺繍から品物を押収した。でも五郎は取られた品物は全部暗黒商会に行ったって言わなかったか。
それに明日五郎の許可を得るとも聞こえたね。やっぱり怪しい。これらの押収品も奪われたものじゃなさそうだ。彼らがいない間にどんなものがあるのか確認しておこう。
瑠璃だ。消化骨髄とかだとばかり。一体何に使うんだ。
どれどれ、何があるかな。
この箱、厳重に梱包されているな。中には何が入ってるんだろう。あれ、この花や植物は何だろう。初めて見るぞ。小さな紙切れがある。 か精神だぞ。サンゴ信者かと思った。
何か見つかった？
精神とルリユリがたくさん。他にも不思議なことに知らない花や植物がいっぱいだぞ。
これは薬品の重要な原料で高価なものだよ。もしこれだけの量を離島から輸入するとしたら、はっきり言って恐ろしい値段だ。それに関税払い込み証明書がないから密輸品の可能性が高いね。面白い。ノブッシュはどこでこれを手に入れたんだろう。他に見つかったものはある？一般客向け紹介？離島にそんな紹介があるなんて聞いたことないな。もしその紹介だとしたら密輸の可能性が大きくなった。初歩的な推測がある。まずは。
おい、何者だ？
しまった、バレちゃったぞ。
隊長なのか？
なんだ、隊長だったのか。びっくりした。泥棒かと思ったよ。隊長、俺たちのことを覚えてるか？戦争の時、俺とマサシが傷病兵収容所にいた時、鉄平があんたを連れてきて、あんたは薬をくれた。
何言ってるんだ。隊長が俺たちを忘れるわけないだろう。隊長、みんな寂しがってたんだぜ。戦争が終わってからずっと会ってないからな。この島に来るとき、隊長は五郎様と三五宮様だけに会っていくだろう。兄弟たちだって会いたかったんだぜ。心配ない。俺たちは絶好調だ。
何が絶好調だ。隊長は知らないかもしれないけど、マサシはこの間前線で突然倒れたんだ。興奮しすぎて脳に問題が起きたと医者からは診断されてさ、薬を飲まなかったら認知症になっていたところだったんだ。
認知症だと？俺が倒れたのはお前が矢に撃たれて死んだと聞いて焦ったからだ。後から知ったが、こいつはただお尻に矢が刺さっただけで全然平気だった。
平気って気軽に言うなよ。2本も撃たれたんだぞ。それに両方とも左側に命中した。矢尻には毒が塗られてたし、毎日薬を塗っても未だに完治していないんだ。寝る時だって傷口が裂けてしまわないか心配で。
ここで立っていられるだけよかったろ。
それもそうだ。言い争いはここまでにしよう。隊長、今回は何の用事なんだい？
おお、この品物はノブッシュと宝刀団から押収したんだ。轟さんから得た情報でな。轟さんが教えてくれた場所に行って犯人を一掃し、ついでに品物も押収してこいと言われた。
そうだ、隊長はまだ轟さんを知らないだろ。俺たちは今彼の下で働いてるんだ。少し前に三五宮様が経済活性化のための計画を発表して、轟さんを責任者とする小隊を結成したんだ。
彼は優秀さ。前は農夫だったんだが、今や小隊をうまく率いてる。それに2人の息子は俺らの戦友なんだが、五郎様からも表彰されたんだぜ。すごいだろ。
それで俺たちみたいに怪我を負った兵士は轟さんの元に移されたんだ。今は轟さんの指示に従い、給料も彼からもらってる。あいつらはこのことをなんて言ってたっけ？
転職だよ、バカ。
そうそう、転職。俺はいいことだと思ってるよ。もともと金持ちじゃないし、ここには作物を育てられるような土地もないからな。食料は外から調達する必要がある。戦時中と同じように軍隊を維持するのはなかなか厳しいだろ。
なるほど、大体は理解したよ。一つ聞きたいんだけど、その犯人たちは今どこにいるの？
この人は
隊長の友達だったのか。なら話してもいい。実は犯人を全員捕らえたんだ。今はここからそう遠くないところに拘束している。 ただ俺とマサシは任務があって今夜は都合が悪いんだ。他の人に案内してもらうから少し待ってくれるかな。
大体はつかめたから、あとは直接確認するのみだ。早速行こう。まだ少し混乱しているのかい？実は今回の件は以前担当したある事件ととても似てるんだ。金製品の取引の事件なんだけど、手口が古いんだ。犯人はまず路上を徘徊していた通行人をわざと倒して、その隙に通行人の袋に品物をこっそり入れた。品物のありかを知った受け手はその
旦那様、許してくれ。俺はただの下っ端なんだ。
旦那っていうほど僕も旅人も老けてないんだけど。
いえ、若旦那、どうか。
まずは質問に答えてもらおうかな。
はい、もちろん。
兵士たちが君たちの拠点からたくさんの品物を持って行ったけど、地元のものじゃないよね。どこから持ってきたんだい？
あれは全部海辺で拾ったんだ。
拾った？
いや、奪ったものだ。
一から正直に吐いてもらうよ。
はい。品物は海辺の小さな商船から奪ったんだ。いや、実際は全部が全部奪ったものってわけじゃない。何しろ商船の見張りは俺たちを見た途端に逃げ出しちまって品物を置き去りにしたんだ。だから俺たちはそれを拾って、だが喜ぶ間もなく兵士たちがやってきて俺たちを捕らえた。まだ品物を手に入れたばかりだったのに取られるなんざ運が悪い。そして俺たちも捕まったんだ。
つまり正体の護衛は君たちと一戦も交えず逃げたのかい？そんなことありえるの？
おそらく怖くて何もできなかったんだろう。無理もない。うちの親分の戦闘力は半端ないんだ。その筋肉を目の前にすれば誰だって怯えるだろう。
なんだかうさんくさいな。
小さい若旦那、信じてくれよ。俺たちは確かに兵士を怖がらせたかもしれねえが、あいつらが品物を捨てて逃げたんだ。そうだ、他にも覚えてるぞ。あの中にはサンゴ真珠と消化骨髄が入ってた。あの光沢と優れた品質、素晴らしかったぜ。だがその後海賊の一味に取られたのは残念だった。あの日うちの親分は腹を壊していて負けちまったんだ。不運だったぜ。
海賊？
そうだ。大きな船から降りてきたジンを率いるやつは眼帯をつけた綺麗な女性でよ。まさかあんな迫力だとは思わなかった。バシバシっと親分を一瞬で倒しやがったんだ。
眼帯の綺麗な女性？
おや？パイモンは誰を思いついたんだい？
誰も、おいら何も知らないぞ。
じゃあ君は？へえ、そうか。じゃあ君は知らないってことにしておくよ。どうやら僕の推理した通りみたいだ。轟さんは海賊の一味と怪しげな取引をしていて、五郎大将はその隠蔽に手を貸している。
そんな。
さっき轟さんは明日の朝正体が出発する前に三五宮で五郎の許可を得るって言ったよね。他にも何か怪しいところがなかったか、今のうちに考えておこう。明日の朝彼らに直接退出する。その時僕の最後の疑問も解決するといいんだけど。あれだよ、この島に欠けている大事なもの。五郎大将と轟さんから、そして徳田正志からもその剣の匂いがプンプンするんだよね。さてどんな真相か明日が楽しみだよ。今日は早めに休んでね。明日の朝三五宮で。
難攻不落。暗山八九。いざ。ふっ、天道ここにあり。剣女盤石。いや
とどろけ。
難攻不落。
気ぃつけるぜ。祭りの開始や。
相手を間違えた。せっふん
シェ天空ライオン
花火見えひん
とどろけ。へっへっやっへっへっはっ燃えろ。
難攻不落。いや隙あり。はっふんはっ
ほなえ
剣女盤石。
ほな行くで星と深淵無事今日の
逃げようなんて思わないでよね。
みんなを守るからね。姿を見せよ。6308式ユニット超拡散形態。
足元に気をつけて。風だ
はっとよっはっ断罪の名においてふう
逃げようなんて思わないでよね。
7号式モジュールほっえいほっ吸引テスト開始。
足元に気をつけて。風だ
気出してよ。6308式ユニット、夜の権限。安全距離確認。
逃げようなんて思わないでよね。
無双の風シミュレーター。ほっとほっ。
一緒に遊ぼうよ。
みんなを守るからね。吸引テスト開始。影のカラスが優也。
風だ。
はっとえいはっとはっよっはっ。バーバラ姿を見せよ。
足元に気をつけて。
安全距離確認。元気出してよ。はっ吸引テスト開始。7号式猛獣。痛い。
逃げようなんて思わないでよね。
お嬢様の仰せのままに。
みんな頑張ってね。とみんなを守るからね。
ここだよ。
はっよっはっやっ。
足元に気をつ。
安全距離確認。ほっ